Mr. Chairman, we're live.
Operations. We have two bills to consider today. Both are Senate files. Senate File 30, electronic voter registration revisions, and Senate File 31, engrossed Uniform Mortgage Modification Act. So the first one up today, let's start by taking roll. Thank you.
Representative Brown,
Present.
Representative Heft, Representative Johnson,
Here.
Representative Locke,
Present.
Representative Lucas, Representative Webb,
Here.
Representative Weber, here, Representative Yin,
Excused.
Chairman Knapp.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. All right. And my mic wasn't on before either. So welcome to corporations. This is the Wednesday, February 18th meeting. We have two bills on tap, Senate File 30 and Senate File 31 engrossed. And we will start with Senate File 30, which is just some simple changes. And we will have Mr. Urbino, if you can come up. And I hate to continue using you like this, but this was a joint interim bill for joint corporations. And so we'll just go through the bill and what the changes were. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, this was a joint interim bill and it passed unanimously out of the joint interim. I think it was discussed at the first meeting initially in April or May, and then it was forwarded on to the session in at the meeting in Casper in August. What it really does is a pretty simple cleanup bill that the clerks are here today. It's kind of their number one priority. And we had presented the idea of when we were working on implementation with the clerks on House Enrolled Act 57 from the 2025 legislative session, specifically dealing with the durational residency requirement. We began talking about existing statute and the incorporation and implementation of that bill, about how it treats both incoming residents who may not meet the durational residency requirement for an upcoming election, as well as how the election code has historically treated those who will turn 18 prior to the election, at which they offer to vote, but not before the next upcoming election. So as the language currently reads, an individual in some circumstances may legally begin the process of registering to vote, but would be prevented from voting in the upcoming election. Specific to the bill, the amendments to Wyoming statutes 18, 16, 102, 22-1-102, 22-3-102, 22-3-103, and 22-29-104 specify that an individual must be at least 18 and have been a bona fide resident of Wyoming for not less than 30 days prior to the election at which he offers to vote. And in the case of an 18-year-old, there is actually a pre-existing conflict between two statutes that we and the clerks identified. But in all other areas contemplates that an individual must be at least 18 years old before the election at which they offer to vote. In both instances, this presents a unique scenario, which is probably easiest to explain in the context of a primary election, in which specific to the durational residency aspect, the time period between the 30 days from the election and the 14-day lockout period. And of course, Wyoming's exempt from NVRA, so we allow same-day election day registration. So it wouldn't affect any registration and voting in that 14-day lockout period. They would be prevented from registering and casting a ballot because they'd be required to cast a ballot when they register. But in that window, that like 16-day window, and then in the case of 18-year-olds, throughout that statute, they would be allowed to register prior to a primary election, but they couldn't vote in that primary if the next election that they were registering for was the general election. And so this is a cleanup bill, Mr. Chairman. Happy to walk through briefly the amendments starting on beginning in Title 18. dealing with the definitions of qualified elector, going on to page 2, specifying really the intent of the legislature. And we discussed this at length during the interim, that it was to prevent individuals from voting in the next election. So it's just making that uniform throughout statute, further clarifying the intent of the legislature. And in the case of 18-year-olds, cleaning up a pre-existing conflict within the statute. So it goes on, and these are basically consistent amendments throughout the bill, specifying that it's not the election at which he may offer to vote, which is usually the next, almost always the next election, and specifying that it's the next election, and cleaning up that conflict within statute. So that goes across 22-1-102, onto page 3, 22-3-102, to page 4, 22-3-103, onto page 5, 22-29-104. And I want to speak a little bit to the effective date that was discussed in the interim. This one is not July 1st. The July 1st effective date presented a couple of implementation issues, both with our office and with the county clerks, in which they'll be prepping to send out UOCAVA ballots. And so to ensure sort of a seamless implementation from a system side on our end, on the county clerk's end, to amend our voter registration form to specify that it's the next election on the oath, June 1st, which is how it currently reads, is appropriate. So with that, happy to take any questions.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Urbino. Any questions from the committee? Pretty simple cleanup. All right. Thank you. Ms. Langford from the Clerks Association, welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee. I'm Mary Langford, and I have the honor of representing the county clerks of the state of Wyoming. I have nothing else really to add except for to encourage you to vote for this. We've beat it to death during the interim, and we had a unanimous vote at that point in time. The only change that came from that was the June date for the effective date. Everything's been explained. I'm happy to stand for any questions, but would appreciate your favorable vote today.
All right. Thank you. Any questions? All right. Thank you, Ms. Langford. Anybody else here to testify on Senate File 30, pro or against? All right. Anybody online? Nope.
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right. I will close public testimony for Senate File 30. Committee, what's your pleasure? It's been moved by the twins down at the, no. It's been moved by Representative Weber and seconded by Representative Lucas. Any discussion? Any amendments on the bill? Question having been called, please poll the committee.
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote for Senate File 30. Representative Brown,
Aye.
Representative Heft,
Aye.
Representative Johnson,
Aye.
Representative Locke,
Aye.
Representative Lucas.
Aye.
Representative Webb,
Aye.
Representative Weber. Aye. Representative Yin,
Excused?
Chairman Knapp.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that's 8 aye, 1 excused.
All right. That bill does pass the committee. Any volunteer to work that on the floor? Okay. Representative Weber. All right. Next, we have Senate File 31 engrossed. And this was a Uniform Mortgage Modification Act. And I will have Representative Lucas has graciously volunteered to overview the bill and receive any questions. Thank you, Representative Lucas. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will say for the folks who will be watching this, and I know thousands and thousands of them will in the future, that I have little prepared for this, but the good news is I know this bill really well, and I'm pleased to tell you about it. the Uniform Mortgage Modification Act. This was a joint committee bill. We worked this bill during the summer and in the fall, and we talked quite a lot about it. Basically, this is a bill that modifies or conforms language so that we're all on the same page with definitions. And so I'm going to just back up one quick step. A mortgage modification is a change to a mortgage that typically happens when a borrower, when a loan is in trouble or a borrower has a need for different terms to happen on the loan. And it could be something where the borrower has fallen behind and we're going to take the part that they're late by and tack it on to the end of the loan, or stretch it out over the loan, lower the interest rate, change the payments, things like that. Because we really, in the banking industry, don't want to lose a loan. Mortgages are expensive loans to lose. So we want to really work with borrowers who have fallen into trouble for whatever reason. So what happens, though, a lot of times when we change the parts of that contract, you have to re-register that and put it back out there. And it is possible that a lender could lose their position on the mortgage. So for example, if I am the first lender, I hold first position. And if that house, if you have to foreclose, it's important to know what your position is. You could, if you're in first position, you're in a much stronger position. If you lose that, then that means that if there was a home equity loan or a second mortgage, that could jump up to first position. And it's really hard to lose your place when you're really just trying to help your borrower out. So this will protect the lender in some regards on that. It doesn't require that some modifications need to be registered with the county. So we don't have to have this mortgage relisted. It's already there. And that's a real good thing, because losing mortgage loans is just a really big deal for banks and credit unions. It gets to be pretty expensive. So as we look through the bill, we have a lot of definitions here. One thing that this bill also does is it allows for electronic signatures, which I feel is about time. We've been using electronic signatures in the business world for quite a while, so this is a really good thing. So we've got a lot of definitions here. Stop me at any time that you don't understand one of these, but I'm not going to read them to you. It has a clear definition for the modification, which starts on page 4. And this is basically a change to the loan agreement, the promissory note, if you will, or a credit agreement. This is basically using the same terms with clearly defined changes. So we're changing your monthly payment, we're changing your interest rate, something like that. So those all have to be very clear. The name of the game in mortgage lending always is, let's be as clear as possible so that the borrower understands clearly what is happening here. And there's a lot of laws that require that too, by the way, and this complies with all of that. I'm skipping on to page 6 is the scope. This doesn't affect any laws that are already in place. Discusses very briefly statute of limitations. This doesn't affect any of that. Basically what we're doing is we're just going within the confines of what we've already got and then changing for the borrower's ease. The effect, we still have the same property in most cases. We're not changing any of that. The important part is on page 8. The mortgage retains its priority regardless of whether a record of the mortgage modification is recorded or not. Understand that anytime that there is a modification, there's a ton of paperwork. Everybody knows what's happening here, and the borrower agrees to all of this. So whether it's a modification that is recorded with the county or not, the borrower is clearly understands what has happened there. The maturity date could be extended. Sometimes that's necessary. The interest rate can be decreased, and those are the things I already talked to you about. Mm. And then the electronic signature on page 11, relation to electronic signatures and Global and National Commerce Act. This allows for an electronic signature, which is a good thing, I think. Sometimes you have to do something where the person just can't get in there in person and sign a blue ink signature. That's it in a nutshell. This really gives us some standardization so that we're in terms of terminology, we're comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges on this. I think it's a good little bill, and I encourage your support on that, but I would entertain any questions.
Yes, Vice Chairman Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just real quick, and this is for the unlucky bringer or the lucky bringer, as well as anybody. My recollection of this bill is quite simply, it just makes sure that if you modify your loan, you don't lose your position.
Exactly.
Ultimately, this 9 or 10-page bill or 11-page bill, that's the long and the short of it. And I think it has obviously some specifics, but if you're the primary mortgage, you don't lose your position if you modify. Is that accurate?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Representative.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, Representative, that is exactly what that's the major part of this. I just kind of threw in that electronic signature part as icing on the cake.
All right. Any other questions? And we do have, luckily, I think, some expert testimony in the room that
We
can help out
absolutely
with any
do.
other
Looking
questions.
forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Anybody in the room that would like to come up and give input, valuable input? This is the expert I spoke of, so. All right, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself for the public and have your comments on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, Scott Meyer. Right now, I'm on behalf of the Uniform Laws Commission, and we're the ones that put together this bill. I think, first of all, I'll tell you that Representative Lucas did a fine job putting this thing together and explaining that to you. So if there are other questions, I could go through those. But specifically, Mr. Chairman and Representative Locke, this idea is not just to change that mortgage, but only with respect to without prejudicing the junior lien holders. They're counting on something, so we want to make sure that they get what they bargained for and not be put in an adverse position. So that's why in this particular bill, there are certain exceptions. The biggest one I think everybody can probably understand is that in this current climate we have right now, you're starting to see interest rates drop. And so this isn't necessarily for the benefit of the mortgage or the holder of that mortgage, although it does help them with that priority. But this is a bigger benefit to the consumer because they may want to reduce that, to change their loan. And as you saw kind of before when we had with the COVID stuff and all of a sudden interest rates dropped, people were refinancing those loans. Well, but that takes a lot of effort. Not only do you have to turn around and say, I want to refinance this, and you come to an agreement with lender, whoever that might be, but then you have to turn around and say, okay, let's do another appraisal. Let's do another title search on it. We do all that kind of work, and then we have to re-record it. So there's a lot of expenses that go in there. The whole objective of this is to say, if that interest rate is dropping and you want to refinance with your lender and the lender's in agreement with it, fine, we'll drop that interest rate. We don't have to go through the appraisal process. We don't have to go through a title search. We don't have to do any of that stuff. This is going to be a benefit to the consumer because everybody knows it's the consumer that pays everything one way or the other. And so this is going to try to stop that. There is a benefit, like I say, to the lenders as well, because now all of a sudden they don't have to go through all that. And they have certain, as long as they meet the requirements in here, certain things like we want to convert from a part-time or construction loan to a permanent loan, or we want to refinance because of that interest. Or I think as Representative Lucas brought up, maybe there's a trouble all of a sudden with that lender or that borrower, and you're saying, how do I fix this thing? Well, I'll tell you what we can do. Maybe we'll capitalize all the interest you owed us before, put it into the loan, and now you can make different payments. That helps the borrower as well. So those are the things that we're trying to address under certain circumstances. Again, the whole objective is to make sure not only do we save the costs, but we don't prejudice the junior lien holders, because if you have a second mortgage, you have a HELOC, whatever, we don't want to interfere with those as well. The one thing that I'm very embarrassed to tell you, Mr. Chairman, and I don't know how this happened, but last year when we talked about this, we made an amendment based upon my recommendation from the Wyoming Bankers Association. The idea was, in fact, to say, because this is a uniform law, but courts can look to see what other states are doing it. And everything that we have in Wyoming mortgage law now still stands. It doesn't change it. But we made an amendment that said, not only does that affect, but you're not going to negate anything in Wyoming law. And we passed that in August.
Okay, and so in the engrossed, you'd find that on page 10, I think.
Right. You're
About
right,
the-
Mr. Chairman.
It just basically states this act shall not be construed to negate the validity or priority of a mortgage modification not described in subsection B of this section.
Correct.
Okay.
And then, Mr. Chairman, the committee passed this out in November. For whatever reason, LSO didn't pick it up. So we went through when we were over on the Senate side and made sure that got put back in there. So that's why you see the amendment. It's not like anything different than what we've all talked about over the summer. It was just something that it just missed in the language there. So we want to
Okay.
make sure it was that.
Thank
But-
you for that explanation.
Yeah. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd certainly stand for any questions, and there could be a lot of them. And since I'm the one that helped put this thing together, I probably can answer most anything you have.
Thank you. All right, any questions? No? All right, thank you.
Bet.
Mr. Schultz, do you have anything you want to add?
Just, Mr. Chairman, on behalf of Wyoming Credit Unions, we stand in support of this bill. I think it's good language and appreciate the work that Mr. Meyer and the committee's done on this bill over the interim.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Schultz? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for continuing to explain that for us. Appreciate it. Is there anybody else in the room that would like to speak on this? Anybody online?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Committee, what's your pleasure? It's been moved by everybody. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Second from Representative Weber. Discussion on the bill? Any amendments to the bill? In its engrossed version. All right. Seeing none, please poll the committee.
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote for Senate File 31. Representative Brown,
Aye.
Representative Heft, Representative Johnson,
Aye.
Representative Locke,
Aye.
Representative Lucas,
Aye.
Representative Webb,
Aye.
Representative Weber, aye. Representative Yin,
Excused?
Chairman Knapp.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that's 8 aye, 1 excused.
All right. Senate File 31 engrossed does pass. Representative Lucas, would you be willing to handle that on the floor? You did an excellent job. So, all right. Thank you. All right, with no other bills before us. Oh, I did want to mention one other thing. Interim topics, if you are sponsoring any, please get those in. And we will, I'll talk with Chairman Case and get the date where we will review all those. But please get those in. I think the deadline date was
28.
okay, and that's Friday,
think Friday the 28th.
Friday the 28th. Okay, so if you have anybody contacting you that might want to have a topic in there too, be sure to get it in. All right. All right, with that, this meeting is adjourned.